The salt spray stung my eyes, but I didn't blink. I just kept staring at the churning, black water, the cold Atlantic wind whipping through my hair. It was Leo who taught me to love the ocean. Leo with his easy laugh and his promise that we'd sail around the world on his boat, the Sea Serpent. Partners in crime, Mia, he'd say, slinging an arm around my shoulders. You and me against the world. He said that the night he convinced me to invest my entire inheritance, every penny my grandmother left me, into his sure thing import-export business. I'd held back, scared. My money was my only safety net. But he looked at me with those earnest blue eyes and said, "Trust is the only currency that matters. Mia, I would never betray yours. I was such a fool." The betrayal didn't come all at once. It was a slow, sickening leak, a missed payment here, a vague excuse there. Then, one Tuesday, the bank statements came. Empty. The business was a ghost, a shell he'd used to funnel my money into his own accounts. The Sea Serpent wasn't just a boat, it was his escape vessel, already stocked and ready for a life in the Caribbean, funded by my naivety. The final blow was the email from a mutual friend, a casual. Saw Leo and Sarah looking at rings in the city. So happy for them. Sarah was my cousin, my trusting, beautiful cousin, who I'd introduced him to. The rage was a physical thing, a hot, coiling snake in my gut. It wasn't just the money, it was the humiliation. The way he'd made me feel cherished while systematically dismantling my life. He hadn't just stolen my future, he'd poisoned my past, turning every sweet memory into a lie. Crying wasn't enough. Screaming wasn't enough. The snake in my gut demanded a different kind of payment. That's when I found the key, tucked in an old jacket pocket, a spare key to the Sea Serpent. Leo, ever the sentimentalist, had given it to me when things were good. "A piece of her is always yours," he'd said. He'd probably forgotten it existed. I hadn't. For 2 weeks I learned his patterns. He was complacent, arrogant in his victory. He'd sail out every Thursday afternoon, a solo trip to test the systems before his big departure with Sarah the following month. He never varied his route, a straight shot out to the Deepwater Channel where the cell service dropped and the world fell away. My plan was simple. Brutal. It wasn't about confrontation, it was about consequence. The Thursday I chose was perfect. The sky was a bruised purple, the forecast calling for a squall later that evening. I waited until his mast was a speck on the horizon. Then I drove to the marina. My heart wasn't pounding with fear. It was beating a steady, grim rhythm of purpose. The key slid into the lock of his storage locker, the one right next to his berth, with a satisfying click. Inside, amidst the smell of diesel and old rope, was my instrument of revenge. Not a weapon, not a bomb. Something far more poetic. A duffel bag containing his emergency life raft, a bright yellow, 6-person self-inflating raft, his pride and joy, his ultimate safety net. I took it. I didn't run. I walked calmly to my car, placed the duffel bag in the trunk, and drove away. The entire act took less than 90 seconds. I didn't feel a thrill. I felt a cold, settling calm. The snake in my gut was finally still. That night, the storm hit. It was a real one, howling winds and lashing rain. I sat by my window, a cold cup of tea in my hands, and listened to the weather radio. I pictured him out there, the arrogant bastard, finally facing a consequence he couldn't talk his way out of. The Coast Guard found the Sea Serpent the next morning. It was on the news, a tiny clip, a tragic accident, the reporter said, standing in front of the still churning sea. The yacht was found adrift, heavily damaged by the storm. An extensive search has found no sign of the owner, Mr. Leonardo Vane. He is presumed lost at sea. They interviewed a tearful Sarah. She talked about what a wonderful man he was, how he'd provided for her, how he'd had such big plans. I felt a pang for her, but it was distant. She would grieve and then she would move on, unharmed. She still had her life. Leo had only stolen her heart. He'd stolen my entire existence. The police came by, of course. Routine questions. Did I know him? Had I seen him? I played the shocked, grieving ex-lover perfectly. We had a falling out over money, I admitted, wiping a fake tear. But I never wished this on him, never. They bought it. Why wouldn't they? There was no evidence. Just a missing man and a violent storm. A classic maritime tragedy. It was 3 days later, as I was sorting through the last of my things, preparing to move into a tiny apartment I could actually afford, that I found his phone. I'd taken it from his boat the week before during a friendly visit, a final, petty theft he wouldn't notice until it was too late. I'd kept it, a morbid trophy. It was dead, of course, but on a whim I plugged it in. It buzzed to life, and the notifications flooded the screen. Dozens of them, text messages, emails, all from the day he disappeared. My blood ran cold. I opened the texts. They were from Sarah. "Leo, the storm is getting bad. Please come back, Leo. I'm scared. Answer me. The Coast Guard is asking for your emergency beacon details. Where is the life raft? You always said it was in the storage locker." And then, the final one, sent hours after the storm had peaked, long after the Sea Serpent would have been taking on water. "Leo, your last location just pinged. You're still out there. You're alive. Please hold on. They're coming for you. Last location." He must have had some other device, a smartwatch maybe, that connected to his phone. It had somehow survived, sending out a final, desperate signal. He hadn't gone down with the ship. He had been alive in the water, in the freezing, tumultuous black water with no life raft. I dropped the phone. I saw it all in a horrifying, vivid flash. Not the quick, dramatic end of a sinking ship, but the slow, agonizing fight, the burning lungs, the cramping muscles, the creeping hypothermia, the hope of rescue, fueled by that last ping, slowly dying as his strength ebbed away. He would have had hours to think, to regret, to understand, in the deepest, most terrifying way possible, that his safety net was gone, that someone had taken it. I had wanted him to face a consequence. I had given him a death sentence far more cruel and personal than I had ever intended. I hadn't just killed him. I had delivered him into the hands of his own terror. I walked to the sink and vomited. It was over. The revenge was complete, far more complete than I had ever dreamed. The debt was paid in full, with a brutal, cosmic interest. I had become the storm. I had become the unforgiving sea. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, my face pale and haunted, and I finally understood the true cost of vengeance. The devil doesn't come with a pitchfork. He comes with a promise, and he collects with a quiet, terrible precision.